Hi, this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer for Community Culture Showcase. And we're wonderful to have an audience today. We have a wonderful group to talk about poetry. Everyone loves poetry, and more important than simple poetry is the idea of linking poetry with people understanding what it is to get to be a senior. It's a very interesting program. I have the two people who are administrators of that program, and more importantly, I have two young poets for you to hear what they have to say. Remarkable, and it's wonderful to see young people still very much engaged in something like poetry, which is dear, dear, dear to my heart. So let me welcome you and my guests here today. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your organization?
My name is Chris Morren. I'm a retired physician. I practiced internal medicine and geriatrics with a practice in New London for over 30 years. My partner was Naomi Nomizu, and we had a very busy practice in New London out of Lawrence Memorial Hospital. I retired in 2015 and became a volunteer in a Mystic Geriatrics Institute, which is an all-volunteer organization dedicated to promoting the well-being of senior citizens in this area. We started in 2016 and have accomplished a great deal in our short history. We were responsible for turning David Latazori's Perkins Farm into a health center where he established not only housing, which is not exclusively for senior citizens, and also a prime medical facility that's focused on supplying specialized care for geriatric patients in this community. Other projects that MGI has undertaken are educational projects, and our focus now is on providing a series of lectures for family caregivers. Another important project is the Intergenerational Poetry Project. We're in our third year, and this year we had 6 students participating from 3 area high schools. This project really was the brainstorm of a committee consisting of Melanie, myself, and other board members to try to link young students with older people and generate poetry through biographical information. And I would like to turn it over to Melanie now to describe more of the poetry project.
Right. So I came on board with Mystic Geriatrics Institute sometime in 2020. That's when my jobs at assisted living communities doing a memory care program collecting life stories, which started in 2008. So for 12 years I'd been doing work with developing a program, which eventually I called Gray Dawn Breaking after a John Masefield poem. And the idea was to collect pivotal life moments in an elder's life and convert it into a short narrative poem as a means to enhance memory and cognition. And we did this in a roundtable setting at places like Academy Point and Stone Ridge, Crescent Point, and assorted other assisted living communities. So in March of 2020, that project folded. It came to a screeching halt. And I was paired with Mystic Geriatrics Institute to just discuss how to create goals and objectives. There's a difference between a goal and an objective. So I had that conversation with the board, and then somehow we conceived of this idea of doing an intergenerational poetry project, matching high school students with elders. And we started with just 2 students at Stonington High School in 2021. And then in 2022, we expanded to, we included Stonington High School and East Lyme High School, and had 4 students. And this year, 2023, we had 1 student from Stonington High School, 2 students from Fitch, and 3 from East Lyme. And we were just thrilled with how it evolved, because each of them found a wonderful senior. Some we matched for them, and some they found on their own. And for the concluding program, which we had in April of 2023, all 6 students showed up with all 6 subjects. And they read their poems. We had a musical interlude, and it was just so moving, and everyone was so appreciative of the work the students had done. And the elders were just, some in tears, but tears of appreciation that we have these wonderful young people coming up and showing an interest in a part of our culture that is sort of separate.
Is it just a coincidence that all I see is girls? Is it only young women?
No,
No,
we had our
all
first young man, Kai, from East Lyme High School, who was just a delightful young man. And in his bio, he said the reason he wanted to take part in this project was that he wants to build people up.
How very nice.
And his subject was just so pleased to meet a young man who asked intelligent questions and wrote very compelling poems.
That's wonderful.
I wish he could have been here today.
Yes.
Yes.
His poetry was very moving.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
All
Are
of them.
you thinking about maybe making a book
Yes.
of the poems, even from the past?
What? Yes. You're so astute. I have recently, with Chris's inspiration, come up with an outline which will expand the manual that the students have received, that we Zoomed with them. We go over techniques, and we check on their progress and how they're getting along with their subject. So this book is intended to have all the steps that we've done and include the poems that have been collected over the 3 years that we've done the project.
Because it's certainly common that you create anthologies. And so this, to me, would be a poetry anthology, a creation of your organization, and something that maybe groups, not only here in Connecticut, but all across the area, the country, might benefit from seeing an anthology of poetry which is dedicated to a very specific and probably not well understood kind of relationship. I mean, there has always been talk, and there are programs bringing young people, but it's usually their own family members rather than strangers,
Right.
grandma, grandpa, great-grandma, that kind of thing. This is slightly different in a way where they're total strangers, and you have been able to have such a rapport with these elders that they are willing to open their hearts to you. So I could see how some of them might actually be in tears, because it's so refreshing for, number one, older people to anyone even talk to them, let alone dedicate a poem to them. So there is that sense in our country, we're always moving, and we just don't have time to breathe. And I think that locks out a lot of people who are older. I don't think our society, American society, gives enough weight to what it is to live a long time. My mother lived to be 99. My father was 92. My grandmothers were in their 90s. And I'm sorry that as I was young, that I didn't spend more time with them telling their stories. Now, as a novelist, I have just writing a book about my Hungarian relatives based on the stories that my grandmother had told me. And it's interesting because not only is it a throwback to a bygone era, it also brings up why people came to America. Because unlike my relatives were not afraid of a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism. It was more like this was much more of an opportunity. They had finished up World War I. Hungarians were losers in that war, and so the country was devastated. So that inspired me, because my grandmother telling me these stories about how the Hungarian noblemen had actually made it possible for them to own their land, which is something that was pretty unheard of for Jews in Central and Eastern Europe. So it stayed with me. My grandmother died in 1986, and so I'm writing this book in 2023 because the memories stayed with me. So hopefully our young guests, they will have, the people that they've interviewed will have these memories till the day they die. And you might be able to capture these memories well into, I'm in my 70s, you'll live that long, and you can remember this kind of stuff. So yes, so let me introduce my young poet Ruby, like the ring, like the jewel. So tell us a little bit about you and your interest in this project and with working with senior citizens.
Okay, sure. I'm Ruby. I just graduated high school from East Lyme. I was an editor-in-chief of my high school newspaper, and I really had a passion for poetry in my time in high school. And then this kind of found me through my librarian at the school.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she told me about this intergenerational poetry project and how, like with music, people whose memories are sort of fading with age, maybe art can help them remember what their memories are. And so I found that very fascinating, and that gave me chills when she was telling me about this project, and I instantly wanted to do it. When I joined, I was a little bit late. I was a little bit late to the party. So Melanie kind of told me, like, go out and find somebody. And I knew a man, Tony Spinelli, who is my subject, because he would come into the restaurant that I would work at. And he was always so kind to me. And he knew my mom sort of vaguely because she works at a garden center. And he wanted to know about me and my life. And he was always so kind, so I kind of wanted to give him a gift back. But kind of what you were saying about our society moving very fast and having more focus on careers and stuff, I had sort of a hard time at first getting to the more emotional parts of his story. And it was a challenge for sure. We would go on walks together, and I would try to crack down who is Tony Spinelli. And he did have quite the career. He had many, many careers during his life. So for some of our interviews, it would mostly consist of him telling me the order in which he worked at these places, what date he retired. But deeper down the line, he started telling me these stories, these very emotional and heavy stories. One about an accident he had when he was younger, where he lost his eye. And he's telling me about how shy he was as a child and how hard that was. And then his wife, who he met in college, those very deep, vulnerable memories that he had. And I really tried to use his words when I wrote my poems so that when I could relate it back to him for the rest of his life, when he comes back to these poems, he can really remember how he felt and how he expressed himself with me when he shared it.
Why do you think he felt so comfortable around you? Is it something about you? Was it something about the project? What do you think was sort of the motivator to get him to open up to you?
That's hard. He's a very kind man, and I think at first he was a little bit reluctant to. he wanted to help me in a project that I was doing, and he thought this was just a project for school and that like I had chosen him. But he was so humble throughout the whole time. He was like, I don't feel like I deserve to be chosen. There's probably plenty of other people who are so much more interesting. But I think after a while, I kept reassuring him, like, no, you are the one that I chose because your story is so unique. And he truly just has a one-of-a-kind nature to him. And I think we just connected on that level. And it really kind of goes to the point of the whole project that we are able to become friends across different generations. And I think that's why he opened up.
Interesting. Do you think that your tone of voice or even your gestures made him more comfortable? Because when you're older, I think we have in this society kind of pushing away of people who are older. Somehow, whatever they say isn't relevant. And the fact that you sat down with him in a nice environment, but not in some kind of therapy session type of thing,
Right.
that he was able to open up to you and appreciate what you were actually doing. Because I would think, and I don't know because I'm not part of this project, but my understanding of like poetry is that it's more symbolic than, say, prose, like what I actually write, so that each word in a poem has some kind of meaning. Was it the poetry, or was it your sense of who you were that made him so easy for you to then talk to?
I think it was the recognition that I wanted to listen to what he had to say. I think that is when he sort of opened up. He realized that I wanted to do what interested him. He really loves to go on walks. So I suggested, no, let's not do a sit down. Let's walk together.
Okay. You were listening to him.
Yeah, I really wanted to understand him and where he was coming from. And I don't think I'm like a remarkable person in that I can get him to open up. I just think that people kind of misunderstand elders, and I don't think there's that same like respect your elders sort of sense anymore that there was a long time ago. But I wanted to kind of go into this not in a joking way or an ironic way. I wanted to be very sincere with what I was doing and just show him that I wanted to be there as a support, to give him comfort if he felt nervous about it, and that he would ultimately feel happy with his decision to let me know more about him.
So you've written, do I understand, 5 poems about your interactions with this gentleman?
Yes, these
Would
are 5 poems. Yeah.
All right. Why don't you read us one of your poems, and then we'll talk a little bit about, what it took to actually write that. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, this is the first poem that I have in my sequence, and it's called Childhood. Farley Street was no easy street. Farley Street was a place of cold toes. Farley Street had barracks and living remnants of the conscription. You don't have many choices when war and poverty snatches them from your puny hands. So go on then, get dressed in front of the space heater. How strange this is, this feeling to know the struggle of my parents, a struggle that is brittle and grapple. How strange that I live on this edge and yet cannot be the one to fix it. I like fishing, and my brother Jim likes baseball. I like nature, and Jim likes girlfriends. But at least we know we will never live on Farley Street when it's our turn to do it all over again.
So what was Tony's reaction to your reading to him? I assume you read this poem to him.
Yes.
Yeah. What was his initial reaction?
His initial reaction, I kind of found it hard to read this and look into his eyes, and because I was a little bit nervous about what his reaction would be. But from what I gathered, I think he was surprised that I remembered all those details because I kept notes while we were talking. And things like Farley Street, the street that he grew up on in his childhood, I think it really brought him back. And I wanted to kind of create an image for the audience as well. So he was smiling, and I tried to add like a sense of humor into it, but there was also like a wave of emotion on his face. He kind of got teary-eyed when I started this.
Was that your intention, or were you surprised by his reaction?
I was very surprised. I didn't expect him to
So
react
you were
that way.
so effective, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Why don't you read us another one? Oh,
Okay.
and tell us the title of the poem.
Okay. I'll read this one. This is called Alice, and this is about his now wife of over 50 years. Alice. Check, check, check. You are the first woman to check all the boxes. That first night, some 57 years ago, when our feet moved and our hearts raced, oh, how we danced. I thought I'd never see you again. But then, there you are. My luck? No. My fate was to see you again. You are the first woman to check all the boxes. Would you like to see a movie? So natural we are, so comfortable, so safe. With you, I could drift forever. Even if your parents or Father Powers or the whole world objects, you are the first woman to check all the boxes.
So what was his reaction to that poem?
That one got him really emotional. His wife was there that day.
Yes.
And I was seeing her reaction and their daughter Michelle's reaction, and that one really brought them back, I think, because I'm bringing up pieces of the night that they met, this college dance where they both went to college, the start of their relationship, and then eventually trying to get married and their parents and the Father Powers saying, no, we don't really like this, but them going through with it and them having this beautiful relationship. And I also kept going back to the you are the first woman to check all the boxes, because that is something that he verbally said to me. So I really wanted to bring all those aspects in and make it cohesive.
Did you remember check all the boxes, or was it something that you wrote on a pad as you were interviewing him that came back to you as you were writing this poem?
I wrote that down and I circled it. I was like, there is something here.
Okay, all right, so you immediately figured that those words would have some impact.
I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do something about his relationships, and I think his relationship with his wife Alice is one of the most beautiful.
That's wonderful. I hope that daughter, was her name Michelle?
Yes.
That she appreciates what you've been able to do for them.
I hope so too. Yeah.
So we don't want to, we have another poet here. We do not want to dismiss your great talents as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Morren, and I've been writing poetry since my freshman year.
Okay, talk a little bit louder. You know, I'm real loud, but you know, you don't have to be as loud as me, but just a little bit.
Okay. I've been writing poetry since my freshman year. One of my teachers encouraged to enter the one of the competitions they have at the school, so that's where it started. And I just kept writing in it. And one year at my junior year at Fitch, I had gotten first place one of the contests. And after that, my English teacher had introduced me to this project, and that's how I got here.
Okay, so your teachers were really encouraging. That's nice to hear, because many times kids go through school and you know they don't remember any teachers because they really weren't helpful to them. But it's good to hear that. What's poetry? How did you talked about how you've been writing poetry for a number of years? How did you get interested in poetry versus anything else that you might write?
I guess it was just one of the lessons that they were teaching, and I had first found it, and I really enjoyed it, so I kept pursuing it from there.
So we have to give hands-on to these teachers of yours who have been so instrumental in getting you to this far. That's wonderful, because give him Teacher of the Year award, because many times I don't have enough time. So who was your subject for this project?
My subject, his name was Obadiah Hill, and he was specifically worked in submarines for many years.
Oh.
And a lot of the time he worked on the mechanic part, and a lot of it was,
Take your time, don't worry. It's okay.
he worked it for many years on many different submarines. He would, and even after he got out of the Navy, he would teach people how to work on the machines and like pass on his knowledge that way.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
He traveled many places through his time and just definitely had a lot of stories to tell and was very, very fun to talk to.
So how did you meet him? Did you the project director? Yeah. Okay. So you sat down with him at a table and told him, I want to collect your stories, and from that I'm going to write a poem.
Yeah.
Did he have questions for you about what you were doing?
He did, and he was very interested in it, and he wanted to know more about the project, and he was very excited to participate and share his stories, and it was very lovely.
So how old a man was he? Do you have any idea?
I believe he was
In his 60s, in his 70s? No,
older,
later,
like,
older?
I believe
80s?
Yeah, 80s. I
Oh,
believe.
okay. So he had done this for many years
Yes.
and been retired, I would assume, for several years too.
And he keeps volunteering at the, what'd you say it was called now?
Groton Senior Center, but now they call it Thrive 55.
He still volunteers his time there as much as he can, and he's there very often.
That's wonderful. Did he tell you anything specific about why he wanted to work with you on this poem?
He said, I believe that he wanted to share like what his life was like and to be able to tell someone and tell his story. Because he does have quite a few stories. He's always been a very helping individual in the community. And
So how many poems did you write for the project?
I have 4 today.
4 poems?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to read us one of your poems? And just speak up a little louder.
This first one is called The Learning Process. Through the course of 21 years, I learned a lot of things, even how to fold clothes. The word I would use is structure. There's a certain time for things to get done a certain way. It's all part of the learning process. I'm always open to learning something. You never stop learning. Don't be stagnant. As a military brat, you learn a lot from many people. Working on ships, people come and go. I've been all over with so many people, but for each, I like to pick their brains, hear what I can. I'll take in a little bit of each person, their lifestyle, their knowledge, and make it my own. I am not the same person I was. I've been shaped by those around me. I've learned from an infinite number of people.
And what was his reaction to that specific poem?
I had read them all to him before the thing, and he really enjoyed all of them. There was, since I had read them all in order, he basically was like, he enjoyed all of them, and he said, I trust in what you're writing, and I think that it represents it well of what I said.
Well, that's wonderful. Does he have a living family? Does he have a wife or children or something?
He fosters children.
Fosters children?
Yes, he
Oh,
does.
my goodness, okay.
He never married. I remember he was telling me a story that it just never fit in with the life he was living, but he did want to help, and so he would take in kids that needed homes.
Oh, I'm surprised that a single man would be allowed to, it must have been a little desperate.
He did also talk about that. He said he had to go, he went, because of his military background, he went through all the checks, he did like all the steps properly, and was able to do that.
Wow, I'm actually surprised, hands off to the government caseworkers who allowed that to take place. That's wonderful. That's great. So he had no one else to share this with, this poem, or did he? Did he talk to did he have friends or people, and he said,
Yes.
This young woman is writing my life story in the form of a poem?
He's very connected in his community, so he does. There are a lot of people who do know him, but I think that this was a good way to really express that.
Did he say that you might inspire him to actually write himself as a little kind of autobiography, or just to share with the community things that he may have done over the years?
I don't believe so, but I know he was very excited to put it out there.
Okay, that's great. Do you want to share another poem with us?
Yeah. Sorry.
The one about the submarine.
Uh, uh,
I remember the one that I really recall is when he was down at a deep depth and there was a leak into the submarine.
That one is called Down at the Depths. Down at some depth, one of the hatches began to leak water. In a matter of seconds, you could flood or sink. The hatch wasn't properly sealed. We were going down and caught it. We had to emergency float to the surface. If it hadn't been discovered, it could have been a disaster, a serious accident. We returned to the surface for repairs before resuming, and then back below, hundreds of feet below the surface. You're in a coffin, nowhere to go. As a youngster, this didn't faze me. I would still do it, meeting that challenge. However, that one experience truly scared me. When you're younger, you know no fear.
Interesting. So he was in the submarine
Yes.
when it went down, even as a mechanic. Interesting. My brother was in submarines duty, and he hated it. It was too claustrophobic for him, actually. So could have put an early end to his military career. But it's interesting that a mechanic was out down there.
Actually, he was a member of the crew.
Yeah, he was a member of the crew.
He was
worked
one of the
on
machinery gang, as you might say. Okay, he was an actual submariner in the Navy.
Wow. And has he said, since he's in the community, have you presented these poems in, say, the senior center or other places, or some? No.
No.
Do I get that? No. Because this is, I know there's a submarine club. I know that exists. I mean, guys like that would probably be thrilled to hear about this and then even talk about it. Especially, gives me the shivers. I think about that terrible sub that went down to the Titanic.
Right.
And, that's a kind of an ego-driven thing versus these guys in the military trying to save us from who knows what. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's wonderful. Where else have you read these poems beside here and at this actual meeting?
I haven't.
You haven't?
not
Oh,
these
so this
specific
is your
poems.
TV, preview, huh?
Debut.
Yeah, your debut. Exactly. So where are you going off to school now that you've graduated? Where are you thinking of going, or where are you going?
I'm going to Russell Sage in Albany and Troy.
Troy, New York.
Oh, Troy, New York. What's the
Yeah.
name of the school again?
Russell Sage.
Russell Sage. Oh, okay. And are you going to pursue writing poetry in college?
I was thinking to go for an English or communications degree when I was up there.
see. That's nice. That's very nice. And of course, hopefully you'll be on the college newspaper. They must have one.
I believe they do. They didn't talk about that.
And then you should change what you're thinking is in going to TV, right, or radio, to expand your horizons. Because among other things, in my college youth, I did the newspaper, but I also was on the radio. So, but I was a DJ.
You're natural.
You're natural.
We were records. We had
spun
33 to third records. I had 2 turnstiles.
Classical or rock or all kinds?
I did all rock. Yes.
okay.
Although, yeah, right. I was the only one who would know classical music. But yes. So that's something. Even today they have radio. They don't have. I don't think they have turnstiles anymore. It must be something that you stick in some machine and it works that way. But yeah, definitely. What made you take that particular college? Is it something about the English or the poetry or something that had an impact?
No, it was nothing like that. My main reason was because I was offered a scholarship.
Oh, well, that's the best reason to know.
Congratulations.
Yes,
That's wonderful.
exactly.
I'd like to ask a question, and that is, did Obadiah get into his family background at all?
He did. It was just him and his mother for a long time. She would work cleaning houses, and often he would I remember he told me he would learn from the families they cleaned houses for. Like, he would play with their kids, and their fathers would teach him things as well. Because he said he didn't have that father figure. It was nice to have somebody to help him, even though his mother did work very hard for them.
Did that end up in one of the poems? Oh, okay.
That's for a future poem.
Future
When you look back on this experience, when you think about it, this particular experience, the two of you, I ask you this particular kind of experience, I think it's something that you would remember long after you're gone from even the high school and even college. What do you think about that? How do you think this kind of activity will have some kind of impact on you as an individual? I asked you that, Ruby.
Okay. I think just staying connected to your community in a way that's non-traditional or in a way that is related to something you're passionate about. I'm a very artistic person, so I just think that this was such a fabulous idea. And yeah, it just taught me a lot about people and relationships, and I'm just so glad that I had such lovely mentors and a lovely subject. It has really just shown me a lot about how kind my community is and how I could stay connected. I think that's what I really got out of it.
What about as a poet? Is there something about the process, this particular process, which is an unusual process? You know, as a writer, this would, wouldn't be something that would maybe inspire me, but what about you? Do you see this in terms of your artistry? Something about this project that would be something you would cherish years down the road?
Yeah, for sure. This was my first time writing poetry.
Oh, okay.
And so sort of discovering my process for that and finding words that I thought sounded all right in the poem, I thought was very difficult. Writing all 5 took me a very long time. I wrote them mainly in pieces. So I think I'm really going to take away from this opportunity a lot of skills about poetry itself. I got to read a wonderful book that was given to me by Chris about writing and how to find myself in this process, and I think that yeah, it's taught me a lot.
Because yes, go ahead.
May I just add that the students were being asked to write essentially persona poems. They were speaking in the voices of their subjects, not as themselves. So I think that was the extra layer in this project, is that they were not writing about their own life experiences, but entering the mindset of the person they were interviewing.
And is that something that is common in terms of poetry writing, that you would assume the voice of someone else?
Well, there are persona poems.
That's what you call persona?
They're called persona poems. So, you can write poems in the voice of
a dog,
Mighty Mouse, or a dog, or someone else. Many poets do use that technique, and so, but this was actually taking the words of another human being and making it their voice.
I see. It's interesting. Nobody used a tape recorder, did they, to actually capture the actual voice?
One of our students might have used a tape recorder, because that's also a valid way of collecting data and information.
Collecting the actual words. I mean, you had a little notebook and you put on the checks and stuff like that, but a recording would then be something that you could look back on, and like a reporter does most of their work by doing.
What I was encouraging, not trying to change the diction or the colloquialisms. In fact, that's what would make each poem more genuine, is using the actual diction of the person that they're interviewing.
Do you dedicate it to them? I mean, is there some formality about that you would dedicate it to this individual, or, I mean, do you?
Well, at the program, when we had our concluding program on April 29th, each student named who their subject was.
Right.
And each presented their collection of poems to that person.
Were they surprised? I mean, they were expecting this, or no?
I don't think they didn't know what to expect.
I see,
And
I
they were
see.
just totally moved by the whole process.
Do you think that the people that have been chosen, and then Ruby, I guess, chose your own person, you were not given someone?
I was suggesting, assisted living community. There is Crescent Point in East Lyme, but she had her own person, so that was perfectly. It worked out great.
Do you think you'll get more elderly interested in participating? Does somehow the word spread? Is there I mean, you didn't pick them out of.
Each year, it's a different scenario.
Okay.
We don't know who's going to be available. I'm inclined to let the students find their own elder,
Okay.
because
There's plenty of them in Connecticut.
well, there's
really.
no shortage. There's no shortage. You have assisted living communities,
Yeah.
you have senior centers,
Mhm.
you have nursing homes, which is a different level, but you never know. There could be someone there with a treasure trove of information.
Do you somehow put out
Libraries.
how do you get these people? Do you put out the notice somewhere or something?
Well, we inquire. We have connections at assisted living communities. And I called the Groton Senior Center, which is how we got Obadiah. I spoke with the activities director, and she said to me, "I have just the person for you."
Oh, interesting.
And he worked out to be just ideal.
Right, right.
So it's a different scenario each year. We just, for New London, if we expand to New London, I don't know that community. I don't know where the assisted living places are or the senior centers. So that's the other part of the work. We, to set up these matches, we want them to be convenient. We don't want the students to have to travel. The Groton Senior Center was very close to Fitch, so that worked out, and Ruby knew how to find Tony. So it has to make sense.
Right. It has to be a good fit to begin with. You have to sort of-
Geographically and
yeah, you have to kind of guess at whether the person would make a good choice or not.
and with another student at East Lyme, the librarian, Janine, happened to volunteer her mother. And she worked out beautifully. I mean, it's just talking and exploring.
Do you think it takes, I asked our young poets as well, do you think it takes a certain kind of individual who would be willing to be part of your project? I mean, is something, it can't be anybody.
That's another excellent question. I asked the school contact to suggest a student. You're right, it can't be anybody. It has to be someone who is interested in writing, first of all,
Yes.
and who is open to forming a relationship with an older
A stranger,
stranger.
yes,
Yeah.
a stranger.
So we are relying on faculty at the high schools to guide us towards that student and encourage them. For the perks would be to add it to their resume or a little gift certificate and a commendation.
Well, Mariah, do you think that your scholarship in any way was somehow a confirmation of what a good job you did with this particular project? Do you think that was of any interest to the admissions people?
I had gotten the scholarship last year, so I hadn't taken part of this project yet. But this project is definitely something that I would tell people about because it is something that
You would put it on your the same way you put it
Yeah.
on your resume as something that people should look at and say, oh, not only are you a poet, but you're a poet and working with a very different kind of audience. It's not a common audience. I mean, you hear projects now going on with say people with color or people in the LGBT. Did I miss a
Q.
You missed Q.
Community? Not to make fun of anybody,
Yeah.
but I mean this is quite different than that. This is like a throwback 2 years ago when you actually wanted to hear what your seniors might say about life in general, that their lessons in life could have some bearing on providing you some wisdom for the future. We don't have those opportunities too much anymore. I can remember when even I was a Girl Scout, we used to do things with senior citizens. I mean, I don't know if any of you were Girl Scouts, but I mean, that whole process of dealing with seniors has been really, I'd say, ignored. And it's particularly been true, I think, because of COVID, because older people were viewed as disease-prone, more likely to have problems, and therefore people avoided them, much more so than even before. And so this is you started during COVID, right?
Yes.
Yes, that was a tricky time to begin something like this. So it was hard figuring out how these students were going to meet up with their
Because I mean,
subjects.
I can remember you had to wear a mask. I mean,
Right,
who can have a casual conversation when you're wearing a mask, sometimes a double mask when you were meeting with people?
It was tricky.
Yeah.
It was tricky.
Yeah, so now it's kind of much easier, right?
Things
Some of
have
the
loosened
barriers
up.
are gone.
Things have loosened up, and we're feeling like it's a more normal time.
So when are you going to start looking for people in the September?
Fall.
You starting in the fall?
September, we're
You
going to start notifying the schools
Mhm.
and, getting the word out and reaching out to New London.
We want to expand to at least one more high school.
Mhm.
And I think what we've determined is that 6 is the maximum number.
Of students you want.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the amount of work involved, not only on the part of Melanie and me, but also on the part of the students, because there are a number of conferences that we've been doing on Zoom that the students really have to participate in order to sort of keep up with the process.
Right.
And it's, as Melanie mentioned, we start in late fall and we go through the winter and the spring and
All
as
building up towards the culminating
culmination,
program. And may I add that each year we learn something new, and this last year's student, Molly, suggested we do a workshop before the presentation. And that was just a marvelous process where we all gathered together at the Mystic Noank Library in the morning and read through their poems and workshopped them a little and talked about diction, projecting, etc. And MGI provided lunch for all of us.
Yeah, in the library, no less.
In the
yeah.
library, and I encouraged all the students to go take a tour of that library, which is really a beautiful space. And then we did the program. So the workshop was from 10 to noon, and lunch from, for an hour, and then the program from 1 to 3. And it was just a wonderful day, in my opinion.
Yeah, do you concur? The two of you concur? Was that good? It was like practice?
Oh yeah, the
The
workshop was
workshop.
really
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
The workshop.
And so that was a student's suggestion from last year.
Yes. Well, do you have any suggestions for Melanie and Chris?
No notes. It was perfect. It was truly
Thank
a
you.
wonderful,
Thank you.
Thank you.
wonderful day.
It was really a pleasure to get to know each of you.
Absolutely.
So, and Harriet, thank you so much for this
My pleasure,
opportunity.
my pleasure. This is a wonderful thing. You'll come back next year
I sure
with
hope so.
a whole
I hope
bunch
so.
of
Knock on wood.
yeah.
With all sorts of grants in hand.
Oh, of course, of
And
course.
scholarships.
A scholarship.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, I would think, I don't know, that this experience would really look good on a resume. And particularly, Ruby, you didn't even write poetry before this class?
No, I was involved in spoken word. I did the poetry out loud competition.
Oh, okay. So you're not a complete novice. You
But I had never written. I love to study it, but yeah, this is taking me to a new level, I guess.
How is this different than what you did before in terms of your artistry?
Studying poetry and figuring out how you want to portray it is very different than your own words, because I don't have to figure out what the poet was trying to say, because I am the poet here.
Right,
So,
exactly. Do you have a favorite poet?
my favorite poet is Jennifer Militello.
Okay.
She wrote a poem called Mansplaining, and I would recommend everybody check it out. It's very interesting.
Okay. Do you have a favorite poet?
No, but I have a favorite poem.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's from a collection. It was written from the perspective of a spider.
A spider.
And
Oh my
how
goodness! I was thinking dogs. Spiders even
if it
better.
had looked different, looked more like a dog, if it would have been killed in the house. You know, people are scared of spiders.
Yes.
I love that poem. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name. But if you do get the chance to try and look it up, I definitely recommend reading it. It's a very beautiful poem. It's sad, but it's.
Does anybody write short stories? I mean, that's sometimes what poets do. They go to that next level. And do you write short stories?
Yes.
How short are your short stories?
It depends. Usually, sometimes they're like 2 paragraphs. Sometimes they're like up to 4 pages. So I like to write about. It depends on the genre. There was one for a horror story one that I kept short because that.
You want to get the horror out soon.
Yeah. But it depends really on like the type of story and if it needs more detail or if it's one that can like keep more suspense, which is why.
Interesting. Well, how do you compare poetry to short story writing?
I think short story, there's more detail, and with poetry, there's really a lot hidden behind the words. That's why
Okay.
people have
All right.
are a lot more within each word than there would be in a short story because you have more room to explain it rather than in poetry. A lot of times there are longer forms of poetry, but often it is short and like a couple of stanzas. There's a lot you have to say with a very little amount of room.
Yes, I would think, no, I don't write poetry, I never have, that each word has some merit versus in a book, so many words. Even in a short story can be so many words, but in poetry, each word has some kind of meaning. And in the case of this project, you're not only picking a word, but you're picking a word that comes from the mouth or the thoughts of someone else. So, that I would think as an artist, and I think both of you are artists, that would be very much of a different kind of challenge. But you go from writing this poetry because of this particular project into writing poetry because you've discovered a new medium. Do you think so? Yeah? Have you now been writing more poetry than you might have?
I think I've been taking a different perspective on poetry, definitely. I didn't really write from different perspectives before, but this project definitely opened my eyes to writing about people's lives if they're willing to share with me and telling a different kind of story.
Can you see yourself doing something like this on your own without Yeah,
Most
you can.
definitely, yeah.
Would it be the same group? Would it be something like seniors, or could it be children, or could be something, a dog, or something else?
I think everyone has a different kind of story to share, so I would definitely be open to writing about other groups as well as this one continuously.
Interesting, yeah. What about you, Ruby? What do you think? Poetry was your beginning, but do you write short stories?
I don't write short stories, no, but I would like to. I would like to explore that.
Okay.
But I would really like to write poems for my grandparents. We've talked
For
about,
them?
Yeah.
Or from their words, just like you did with this other gentleman?
Just like this.
Oh.
I would really like to do that, and we've kind of talked about it because I think they have very interesting stories to tell.
Right, exactly. And you got your little notepad. It's probably got a few empty pages, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I want to thank you for all coming here. And it's kind of scary. There's lights on and there's cameras, but you guys did a great job. Is there any following words you wish to tell the audience? Do you have any ending words that you want to tell the audience?
Don't be scared of poetry. It's not as scary as you think, and it's very beautiful.
What have you got to tell our audience?
I think everybody should give it a shot at least once. It is a very beautiful art.
And our two older
I
guests.
wanted to say, from the point of view of Mystic Geriatrics Institute, why do you do this? The reason is it validates the lives of these older people, where, as you mentioned, otherwise society might turn their backs on the older individual. This gives every participant, every elder participant, a sense of the value of their life. And that's one of our goals.
That's great. And I'm sure they share the fact that they have had this experience with lots of other people. So, or so that they can say, I participated in this, and maybe even sort of like your outreach out there, maybe communicating and getting other people to participate, because it was such a wonderful experience for them.
Well said,
I would
Chris.
hope so.
I agree. I think we tend to marginalize our elders. There's that tendency. And in high schools, you don't see an older person. You don't see them at many rock concerts, some perhaps, maybe. And you don't see them at sports events, well, occasionally. But this is an intentional way of trying to bridge the generations. And again, validate the life experiences from the most humble to the most glorious. They don't all have to be submariners or, opera singers, or it can be the most humble life, and that's still worth capturing.
Mm-hmm. So if people want to find out about your organization, they should contact what's the email address?
It's mysticgeriatricsinstitute.com.
Okay, and you're located, there you go, and there's a phone number for people to call.
And there's a phone number.
Right, so if they're interested, now you do a whole bunch of other activities, much more than just with the intergenerational poetry.
If they want to be interested in what we do and participate in what we do, just contact us through the website or call on the phone. We'll take their name down and get their contact information.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad you were here. Now, I'll just put in a promotion. On Wednesdays at 11 o'clock in the morning, I teach a creative writing class at Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. It's completely free. So if you want to come down and join me, we encourage. It's a little bit different. We don't have you do lots of little exercises. I'm not a big fan of that. I like you to think about what you want to write. Go home, think about it, write it, show it, share it, maybe go do a little editing, and then come on back. And that's my kind of creative writing class. So I'm encouraging people to do that. I'm also a organizer for something called Literary Salon, which will be going on in August in Westerly, Rhode Island, and I'll have more information about that. You can always contact me at Grayson, Harriet @gmail. So I want to thank my guests. I wish all of the best for you young people. When we are older, I don't know how long the best is going to be, but by all means, enjoy the very best. So this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer. Hope to see you next time. Enjoy the summer. Make sure you don't get fried.